yung doon, I mean, one thing, COA went out of its way as well also to emphasize the operative word is deficiency. It's a technical term for editors, auditors, and as government has also asserted, deficiency does not necessarily mean anything was stolen, not necessarily.
Yeah.
The DOH was also framing that a lot of this has to do with documentation, a lot with reporting, and so on. All of that as a given, when you look at the content, what is the biggest thing, nonetheless, that to you DOH should report and explain to the public?
Well, first really is to me, the 11 billion unliquidated allotment. So unobligated funds. Meaning, if it is unobligated, it cannot be spent anymore after December 30, 2020. And out of that, they were able to explain 5.1 billion of that because according to them, 5.1 billion of the 11 billion is a continuing appropriation for 2021. But the problem is, how about the 6 billion? Yun. So they admitted that some amount, like about 1.9 billion, it was returned already. So the point really of the report, especially Director Doris Ugay and Chairman Mike Aguinaldo, the fact that it was not obligated, that these amounts were not spent, it's already a disadvantage and a bad effect on our situation because we need those funds to buy materials, equipment, and of course to pay our health care workers. So the fact that they were not spent and others have no documentation, that's already really a problem. And that is why it has to really be answered. And precisely the hearing was conducted to hear their side so that the people will already know what are the defenses of the DOH.
What about the effect naman on our fight against COVID, no?
Yeah.
I mean, especially offhand pa nga, the fact that you're now, sabi nga ni Secretary Duque, taking their time off from fighting this pandemic to answering all of these allegations, no? But apart from that, does this affect, for example, how Congress will probably, draft the budget? Well, not what you draft the budget, but as far as the approval of the GAA, I mean, will that affect Congress in any way going into 2022?
Yes, that's why when Secretary Duque asked for my support, I said, yes, we always support the DOH. But it should not be the same as 2020. When we have 67 billion in deficiency, you should be able to correct this, to explain this, get all the documentation so that all of this will be properly be accounted for. And then in this year, 2021 budget, make sure na magasto na natin lahat so that it will reach our people already. That's what I told him. And when that is shown, that you have complied with the requirements of 2020 as required by COA, and you perform a good job in 2021, then we will be able to give you more in 2022. But if not, then we will be scrutinizing, the 2020, whether they have that absorptive capacity to be able to
speaking of which, Congressman, I'm just really genuinely curious, and maybe for our education, you've been a public servant for a long time. You work with public servants, marami sa LGU, sa executive. Why does that happen? Unobligated funds, both from good faith all the way to bad faith. What are the different factors that lead to ayan na yung pera, hindi pa nagamit?
Yes, I think really it's difficult to explain that, because the budget for 2020, for example, was approved in 2019. So you go take off running in January of 2020. And then, of course, the Bayanihan 1 was approved sometime in May. So therefore, they have time. And Bayanihan 2 was, in fact, extended to June 30. So there is really no excuse to be able to not obligate these funds. And that is why this is one of the findings of COA. So now that it's already out, by 2021, we hope that the Department of Health will be able to really spend them and spend them properly. Huwag natin sabihin na matagal kasi yung region magsasubmit ng mga receipts and all the documentation. No! they should also know the regional should also be directed to immediately send all these documents. So we don't want this to happen again in 2021, so that services will not be delayed. And what is budgeted for this year should already be given, like the payment of the special risk allowance from January to June 30, the purchases of the PPE. Ang problema pa dito, 42 billion of the 67 billion, yung 42 billion, transfer nila sa isang agency, sa DOH, which is the procurement service of DBM. Now, to me, it should have been really DOH who should have done that, because they are the most knowledgeable. What are PPEs? What are ventilators and all of that? So it's given to the PS, to the procurement service of DBM. And then the problem, and that's why COA saw it, there is no memorandum of agreement. There are no documents of this transfer, that you legally transfer 42 billion to the procurement service of DBM, PITC, andyan din, and then local government units. So they should really make sure there is proper documentation.
So, Congressman, listening to you, mukhang hindi kayo fully convinced about the explanation ng Department of Health so far sa pagharap.
Well, there are also good explanations that continuing appropriation, that they have authority like meal allowance, that cash equivalent will be given. So I think it runs both ways. No? There are also explanations which are very acceptable, and we accepted them. But there are also explanations which, for example, the loss of sub-obligated allotment of 2 billion and the loss of the foreign assisted projects, where they are still going to ask for reissuance of SARO. It's not a very good explanation, because they should have done that already before December 31, 2020. So, okay lang yun. No? So, there's an exchange of idea. We have already an idea ano yung mga naging na-explain nila, ano naman yung hindi pa na-explain.
But for the release of COA findings, is there a specified timeline specified by law?
No, not really. Yeah, it's just
Sinasabi nyo, July na eh. Bakit July lang nilabas?
Yes, I
specified timeline.
Yeah, there must be, but considering really that there are just so many agencies to be examined and so forth, and of course, a big budget is given to DOH because of the pandemic. So, may leeway yan eh. Even kung may requirement in their own rules, that can be subject to, being able to extend. Kasi, so in fact, I believe that it should be earlier, but they came out just this July. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
I was going to ask.
Go ahead, Lucy. May time pa tayo.
Just, last question na lang. Does it look to you like it's just a Kabagalan issue or a worse issue like corruption? How is it looking?
It will be
at
difficult.
the moment?
Yeah, it will be difficult for us to judge that. So the situation is that
Kabagalan ba yan o irregularity ba yan na function of Kabagalan?
Yeah. Well, Lucy, we can give the benefit of the doubt that Kabagalan. In fact, the COA said that there is no corruption at this point involved. So take it from COA. Although they don't have to say that because the COA should not have to explain whether it is corrupt. They stand by their findings. There's a finding deficiency. So that is the finding deficiency. And so therefore, we should be able to wait until they would be able to submit their papers to COA.